Hey guys, how's it going? We're back with another week of art in which I use almost every single sketchbook that I own because, why not? We're also going to be painting some clay miniatures that I sculpted previously and chatting about finding balance in your art, like when to push yourself as an artist and the benefits of making easy art. So without further ado, here's a week of art. So I started off the week by priming some mini clay pancakes and cookies. Because I use a terracotta clay, I like to prime my sculptures before painting just so that I have a nice light base to work with. Sometimes I'll also add a little bit of orange or a yellow to tint my primer a bit so I have a doughier looking base, but if not, stark white's the way to go. After priming, I started in with the first scene study for the home theme. This theme came about mainly because I really enjoyed the architecture and cottage themes from earlier in the year, and I really wanted to paint some more buildings. And first up is Cusco's Palace from Emperor's New Groove. So as many of you know, I'm really into yoga. Have been for about 4 or 5 years now. It started simply as a way to prevent my scoliosis from getting any worse than it already was, but over the years, I've really grown to love it, and I'm constantly finding new ways of diving deeper into the practice. Mind-body connection, growing confident in new poses, challenging my body in ways that I never thought I could. Honestly, just learning to sit in meditation for longer than, 2 minutes without getting all squirmy it's a pretty big feat for me. But over the past month or so, I've really been thinking about the idea of balance. Stick with me here, I promise I'm gonna relate this back to art. So balance in yoga isn't just about physical balance, like not falling over in a pose. Balance in yoga is also about balancing strengthening poses with stretchier ones. It's about pushing yourself to your limit, then lying in shavasana to rest and recover. But the main element of balance is your focus or your point of view, what's known as your drishti in Sanskrit. When you're in a balancing pose such as dancer's pose, you find your drishti, so you find a point of unmoving focus out in front of you, and that helps you maintain your balance. The same is true in meditative poses like locust pose or shavasana. Your drishti might be your breath, simply focusing on breathing. Or your drishti might be gratefulness, like meditating on what you're grateful for that day. In either case, you need a point of focus. So what can this teach you about finding balance in your art practice, or your music practice, or maybe a sewing practice? Whatever creative career or hobby that you have. I think firstly, it teaches us that you need to have a drishti, your point of focus. Drishti in art is like setting a goal. Sometimes your focus is simply to find joy in your art practice. Sometimes your drishti is to learn a new technique. Sometimes your drishti is intentionally switching your internal dialogue as you create from I can't statements to I can statements. I'm not good at XYZ to I can learn XYZ. So I recently did a tapas yoga practice. Tapas in Sanskrit means discipline and austerity. It's the idea of building heat or momentum and maintaining discipline even when it's hard. Tapas yoga is those poses that make you shake a little when you're trying to hold them for a long time. They kind of make your muscles feel like they're dying, but they make you stronger. They build your muscles and help you reach new limits. Sometimes in your creative practice, you have to do hard things. The term suck it up and deal with it is a little bit harsh, but honestly, it's very true. If you want to grow and strengthen yourself as an artist, you gotta make some tapas art. You have to branch out and try those mediums that maybe you're a little bit weaker in. Or maybe you create a master study of another artist's work that's just outside of your ability to execute it well. Every tapas piece makes you a little bit stronger. It makes a hard technique a little bit easier the next time you attempt it. It stretches your limitations a little bit more and makes you a better artist. Easy things don't grow your creative practice. Now don't hear me say that easy art doesn't have its place, because it absolutely does, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's chat a little bit about the art that I'm currently making. So we finished Monday and skipped Tuesday because that was my mom's birthday. It's a little bit of a running joke in our family that my mom has disaster birthdays, and unfortunately, it's a joke that is based in truth. What was supposed to be a chill, cozy day at home quickly turned into my dad having to work on one of our vehicles that had suddenly started leaking antifreeze. My mom came down with a cold, and my glasses suddenly fell apart. I'm basically blind, so that resulted in an impromptu trip to the eye doctor to get them fixed. But we did have Chinese food that day and watched the new Enola Holmes movie, so, the day was still a success. Anyways, that brought us to Wednesday, which started off with a little bit of sketchbook time. I have really been in a sketchy mood lately. So I go through these phases where all I want to do is work in my sketchbook, and man, is this one of those times. Now I also go through sketch droughts where I hate everything that I sketch and have the crippling fear that I'll never make anything that I like again, which was honestly where I've been at for a good portion of the year. Thankfully, we've come out of that and I'm enjoying my art again. So it's the end of harvest season right now, which always gets me thinking about childhood memories of picking apples and making applesauce, which if you're looking to gain some arm muscle, there is absolutely no better way than to make applesauce with a crank. But anyways, I've also been learning a lot about movement and how our bodies were built to move in and interact with nature. Now these two thought sidewalks have combined into a full thought train track of homesteading and making things on your own, which has directly impacted my sketchbook. I swear all I sketch right now are these little cottagecore vignettes of finding magic in mundane chores. I don't know, man, it's a whole thing. And the more I learn about this stuff, the more that I want to sketch it. I feel like this past month has definitely been one of those
Level 4 nerd acquired
times when I'm geeking out over very random things. Anyways, the second home study was Nemo's anemone. So during this study, I discovered that Nemo's home bears a remarkable resemblance to an order of Mickey D's fries. I'll never be able to look at either one of those the same way again. Beyond that, I've also been creating little character pages for Bits and Bobbles. So Bobbles has a page in my sketchbook dedicated to his adventures in sourdough baking, and Bits now has one dedicated to her adventures as a botanist and horticulturist. So after finishing the plants theme for the Scene Studies Challenge, I've really been enjoying painting some more plants, so I figured it was time to paint Bits' page. I also really enjoyed painting those wood-carved-esque animal heads from a couple weeks ago, so I wanted to do another round of those as well. Someone on Instagram suggested painting a baby goat, so I figured, why not do a whole farm animal theme? If you haven't noticed, I really like working in themes. It helps me keep on task without getting sidetracked and gives me a little bit more direction when I'm creating. So anyways, let's get back to our chat about balance. So we discussed your point of focus as well as creating hard art that challenges and strengthens you. But balance is about opposites. To hold one leg up, you have to stabilize with the other. To challenge yourself, you also have to rest. At the end of every yoga practice, there's always this period of stretching or resting in a static pose. Now both of these are restorative. They're a cool down to balance out all that heat that was built up during the rest of the practice. You have to balance that tapas with ease. Just as you need to make that really challenging art to grow as an artist, you also need to make that easy art that simply restores you. Those simple little doodles in your sketchbook that just make you happy. Those paintings where you use a medium that you're super confident in, doing those techniques that you've mastered and performed thousands of times before. The art that just flows from a place of confidence in the strength that you've already built. Challenging art grows you, but easy art maintains you. Sometimes you just gotta grab that low-hanging fruit because you're freaking hungry. Now, easy art is completely subjective. My version of easy art and your version of easy art may and most likely will look completely different. What takes me 5 hours of struggling may take you 5 minutes of ease. What's intuitive to me may take intense focus for you. We all come from different backgrounds as artists. We've all taken different classes or worked with different mediums. Maybe you're a master at hyperrealism and making simplified art is what challenges you. Maybe you're an oil painter and working with colored pencils feels like the most complicated thing to learn. Every artist needs to challenge themselves in their own ways and maintain their art practice by making their own easy art. Don't compare your practice to anyone else's. You are your own person. Let the journey be yours. So we've discussed focus, challenge, and restoration, but balance in yoga and in art requires one more element that we'll get to in a little bit. But first, let's talk a little bit more about this week's art. So I realized that out of the almost 90 scene studies that I've done this year, I've not once studied from Downton Abbey. This needed to be remedied, so I decided to paint Downton Abbey for the home's theme. I really enjoyed playing around with the warm light versus the cool shadows on the house, and then also with the dappled light in the foreground. So one of my little life things that I've really been enjoying lately is grocery shopping. Ever since I was about 8 or 9 years old, Friday morning grocery shopping trips have been like me and my mom's thing. We have a system, and apparently we are the only two in our family that actually understand that system. The rest of our family just tend to wander, but anyways. So this has been a pretty intense year for me. I've been working on a lot of projects, and for the better part of the year, my mom's been making those grocery trips solo. But over the past month or so, I've really been trying to work ahead in the week so that I can show up on Friday mornings for our grocery shopping date. Sometimes this also comes with coffee, which is very exciting. Anyways, it's great. All this to say, I really tried to finish my animal heads page and my bits sketchbook page on Thursday so that I could keep that date. Now let me tell you, that was a lot of painting. But I'm actually really happy with how everything turned out. I think I finally hit my stride on this day of painting the animal heads. I felt a lot more playful with my color choices and in navigating the planes of the face. I've been practicing drawing skulls, both animal and human, recently to better familiarize myself with the planes of different skull structures. Finishing Bits' page was ridiculously satisfying. I had stuck with this green, teal, neutral browns and yellows palette for Bobble's page, and I really wanted to create a palette that was similar yet separate for Bits. I really loved this warmer green, gold, and red palette for her. I think part of that palette is due to the autumn colors outside my window, but anyways, I was very happy with it. I of course went in with some colored pencils to add a little bit of shading and pops of color. I did have a bit of a mishap with my eraser suddenly taking off some of the gouache on the desk. Not sure what that was about, but I ended up actually really liking the effect that it made on the desk, so, you know, making lemonade out of lemons. On Thursday, I also decided to paint all the little chocolate chip cookies that I had sculpted the previous week. I tried painting the chocolate first, then going over it with some transparent golden tones to try to mimic the look of chocolate chips inside the dough. Because I have pretty limited clay tools, I've been very experimental in sculpting and painting my sculptures. Air dry minis aren't really as common as polymer clay minis, and some of the techniques used in polymer sculpting, they don't really cross over into air dry. So all those tutorials that I've been watching on YouTube, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. But I'm just winging it, that's just how I roll. Along came Friday. So my mom and I have been watching the new season of The Crown while I have breakfast and a little bit of sketching time in the mornings, so I don't have any footage, unfortunately, of the first part of this sketch. Anyways, like I said earlier, this time of year really hypes me up about apple trees, which got me thinking about fruit trees, which got me thinking about how it's one of my biggest goals in life to have a plum tree, which of course resulted in a little plum picking sketch. I actually ended up turning this sketch into this month's coloring page for Patreon, so it was a win-win. After some sketchbook time, it was time to finish painting those clay minis. I like to mix a little bit of slow drying medium with my acrylics so that I have plenty of time to blend different foodie colors on my sculptures. These little Linzer cookies, they started out just fine, but I promise you a disaster is coming later for them, let me tell you. I think the biggest challenge was painting the strawberry slices. Those things were so small. First I had to sand the edges down because they were a little bit wonky. And then I kept dropping them while I was painting. I dropped them on my tray, I dropped them on me, I dropped them on my paint palette. It was a whole process, but we got there in the end. My favorite part was definitely painting the pancakes though. So the last round of pancake minis wasn't terrible, but I knew I could do better, and I was determined that these ones were gonna look good. And I was a lot happier with how these ones turned out. I will be showing some of the older ones too at the end though, just for comparison. So I found a technique for creating sauces for clay minis. Basically you use cornstarch and a bunch of other ingredients. So of course I bought some little containers and had to give it a try. Unfortunately, I was wanting a bit more of a transparent sauce for some things, and like a thick white mix to create a little bit of a whipped cream effect. Now, this sauce recipe is definitely good for some things. I will be using it in the future. But it was not exactly what I was looking for this particular thing. Which brings us to our final element of balance, a willingness to fail and a playful attitude when you do. In art and in yoga, you're gonna fail. There's no getting around that. The second you attempt to do anything, you're subjecting yourself to the opportunity for failure. So of course, you've set your drishti. You're hoping to succeed in completing this painting or in holding that pose, but sometimes you fall out of a pose. Sometimes you just can't get that color palette right. You fail. But just like in yoga, you acknowledge the failure, you shake it off, and you try again. And that doesn't have to be today. You can fail in a pose or in a painting and say, you know what, I'm done for today and I'll try again tomorrow. But the important thing is that you don't allow that to create an I can't thought pattern. Every failure informs the next attempt, and eventually you will get there. So when I got to the sauces with these minis, I was frickin' pumped. I was convinced that this was gonna look absolutely epic. And then I glooped this sauce into the holes of the Linzer cookies, and it did not look good. In fact, it looked very, very bad. The same thing happened with the whipped cream for my pancakes. It started off really nice, very stiff and whipped creamy, and eventually it just kind of... I failed. My Linzers did not look like Linzers, and my whipped cream basically melted on my pancakes. But balance means that you don't always succeed. And that's okay, because I learned from this process and I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna modify the recipe and try something a little bit different. I'm gonna shake it off and jump back into this artistic pose. I am determined to meet this tapas technique head on and give it another go. All in all, it was a really great week. I learned a lot, made some art that I really loved, and also made some stuff that I kinda hated. It was definitely a week of balance, and I truly enjoyed it. So this next month and a half are definitely gonna be a little bit crazy with the upcoming holidays, but you know, any holiday where mashed potatoes are present is definitely something to look forward to for me. So by the time this video comes out, I'll be about 90% of the way done with the Scene Studies challenge, which is kind of insane. If all goes according to plan, I should be done by Christmas, which is kind of concerning. I feel like I'm gonna have a little bit of a
Who am I without scene studies
crisis, but we'll blow up that bridge when we get to it. Huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for helping to support my art journey. You guys are amazing. Also, I'm running an early Black Friday sale this weekend, 25% off of everything in my shop, originals, mini prints, large prints, stickers, everything. This is probably the last sale that I'll be running this year, so make sure you don't miss out. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
all the things.
I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys!